humanity is headed back to the moon. The project is called Artemis.
From this view, Orion is 1,277 miles above the lunar surface.
Artemis consists of a series of missions.
During the Artemis 3 mission, the Orion spacecraft will orbit around the moon, and it is going to land humans on the lunar surface.
And for the first time, a woman astronaut will be chosen to walk on the moon. Who will it be? When will it be? Coming up on Xploration Outer Space. Hi everyone, I'm Emily Calandrelli and welcome to Xploration Outer Space. After Apollo 17 in 1972, there was halting progress in the realm of human space exploration. The space shuttle program came and went, and the International Space Station was built and put into operation. But the most exciting project, human deep space exploration, was grounded. That all changed in 2016.
The directive I'm signing today will refocus America's space program on human exploration and discovery. It marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon for the first time since 1972.
In a stroke of the pen, NASA is authorized to begin plans for a return mission to the moon.
The United States is headed on a path to finally return to the moon. When Gene Cernan, the last Apollo astronaut to walk on the moon, in 1972 said, "We shall return." First and foremost, what NASA wants to do is build a more permanent presence there.
The project will be called Artemis, named after the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. Not so coincidentally, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo.
Apollo went to the equatorial regions of the moon. And now what NASA wants to do is to go to the south pole of the moon. Why? There's water in the form of ice, oxygen to breathe, and water to drink, but the hydrogen and oxygen found in water can also be used as rocket fuel that allows those deeper trips into space.
The plan is set in stages.
The Artemis 1 mission was primarily designed as a test of the Orion spacecraft itself. The Artemis 2 mission is the first crewed mission of the Orion spacecraft. It is going to involve a flyby of the moon and a return back to Earth. The Artemis 3 mission is the first mission that will involve SpaceX's Starship lander. So it's going to be a demonstration and confirmation of its capabilities, and it is going to be the first mission to land humans on the lunar surface.
Given the enormity of the project, NASA announces 18 astronauts for the mission team. Of these 18, 4 will fly in Artemis 2 and 4 in Artemis 3. Among the 18 astronauts are 9 women. One of them will be the first woman to walk on the moon. The women are Kayla Barron, a submarine warfare officer and a scholar with a master's in nuclear engineering. Christina Cook, BS in electrical engineering and physics. She spent a year in Antarctica doing field research. Nicole Mann. She led the astronaut corps in the development of the Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System. Anne McLean, helicopter pilot. She served 15 months in Operation Iraqi Freedom, flying more than 800 combat hours. Jessica Meir, class of 2013, conducted the first 3 all-woman spacewalks with crewmate Christina Cook.
I'm right behind you. All right.
Jasmine McBelly, BS in aerospace engineering from MIT. She has accumulated more than 150 combat missions with the Marine Corps. Kate Rubens, BS degree in molecular biology and a doctorate in cancer biology from Stanford University Medical School. She has logged 300 days in space and conducted 4 spacewalks. Jessica Watkins, BS in geological and environmental sciences from Stanford University, along with a doctorate in geology from the University of California. also a USA Rugby Collegiate All-American. Stephanie Wilson, BS in Engineering Science from Harvard University, and a Master's in Aerospace Engineering. Wilson has logged more than 42 days in space over the course of 3 space flights. These astronauts are the best and brightest on the planet. The last first of this magnitude was in 1969 for Apollo 11. Back then, NASA was faced with who would be the first man to walk on the moon. And they chose Neil Armstrong. Over 50 years later, these same calculations will be made, this time involving the first woman to walk on the moon. She will be an historic world figure and icon to many. But first, there is much work to get Artemis in motion. Artemis 1 is scheduled for 2022, the exact date to be determined. The mission will be uncrewed. Here is its journey, which will begin at the Kennedy Space Center at Launch Pad 39A.
SLS carries Orion away from the launch tower and achieves liftoff up into the Earth's atmosphere. You'll see it initially starting at a very steep angle, starting to level off as it gains altitude. At first, the white booster rockets will detach themselves from the SLS vehicle, followed by the core stage, the orange rocket of SLS, before the Orion craft proceeds then to the moon. At this point, the Orion craft is now traveling alone. It extends its solar panel array so that it can power itself using sunlight. The Orion craft orbits the Earth using its main engine to place itself on the correct trajectory for insertion into a lunar orbit. It then travels the roughly 250,000 miles to the moon. It will orbit the moon. At its farthest distance, the Orion spacecraft is roughly 270,000 miles from the Earth, far surpassing the previous record set by Apollo 13 by roughly 20,000 miles. It will travel that roughly 250,000 miles back to the Earth. It will then re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. It's going to rely on its heat shield during this time to protect the interior from that heat. Once the heat has subsided, it is going to deploy its parachutes, splash down, land in the Pacific Ocean.
An initial date is set for the launch, August 29th, 2022. August 29th is a cloudy day, but weather is not an issue. Instead, one of the engines on the SLS is having a problem.
Launch Director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson has called a scrub of the attempt of launch of Artemis 1 and the Space Launch System with the Orion spacecraft. The issue was an engine bleed that couldn't be remedied.
Engine bleed means you quite honestly bleed off some of the fuel, run it through the engines without igniting it so that it can cool them down to a sufficiently low temperature before you start the ignition phase. It was essentially canceled because the engine bleed couldn't happen correctly because of a line leak.
After another cancellation a few weeks later, the launch is rescheduled for September 23rd, 2022. On this day, the obstacle is Mother Nature. A tropical storm named Ian is barreling towards Florida, home of the Kennedy Space Center, and soon develops into a Category 4 hurricane. Artemis 1 is scrubbed again. Fortunately, the rocket is not damaged in the hurricane, but the much-anticipated launch of Artemis 1 will have to wait. The new date will be in November. It is November 16th, 2022. The massive Space Launch System rocket is finally poised to launch. Standing 322 feet high, or about 100 meters, with 8,800,000 pounds of thrust, this machine marvel will lift the Orion spacecraft off the Earth.
And here we go.
Okay.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The journey to the moon has begun. Welcome back to Xploration Outer Space. After several scrubs of the Artemis 1 mission, NASA reschedules the launch for November 16th, 2022. This time, all systems are go.
And here we go.
On November 16th, 2022, the SLS carrying the Orion spacecraft embarks for the moon.
And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
It is a test of the Orion capsule in deep space, and it also has another important objective.
The Artemis 1 mission was also testing the heat shield component of Orion. That is what protects the rest of the craft from the intense, extreme heat that it will experience during re-entry to Earth.
9 hours after liftoff, the first glimpse of planet Earth is seen.
And you're seeing there on your screen our first Earth views. This view of Earth captured from a human-rated spacecraft not seen since 1972 during the final Apollo mission some 50 years ago.
Day 6, the Orion spacecraft passes 81 miles, or 130 kilometers, above the surface of the moon, the closest it will get. The mission continues to proceed as we had planned, says Mike Serafin, Artemis 1 mission manager. In 4 days, the spacecraft will enter what's called distant retrograde orbit, which will take it even farther away from both the moon and the Earth.
Commands were sent for the outbound powered flyby burn to occur, which sends Orion close enough to the lunar surface to leverage the moon's gravitational force and swing the spacecraft once around the moon toward entry into distant retrograde orbit, which will last about 6 days.
From inside Orion, you can see what appears to be an astronaut sitting at the console. It is a mannequin. There are actually 3 of them on board, and they have special equipment designed to test the effects of radiation.
We're going to be about 38,000 miles away from the lunar surface as we orbit around.
On day 20, it will begin preparations to return home.
From this view, Orion is 1,277 miles above the lunar surface following its return-powered flyby burn, which sent it around the backside of the moon. Orion now has its sights set on home. And that small sliver towards the bottom of your screen, that's here, that's home, that's us. And that is where Orion is headed next.
Orion closing in on planet Earth, now about 11,000 miles away from Earth, as it continues a very, very precise trajectory.
Finally, on day 26 of this amazing journey, the spacecraft disengages from its service module and prepares to land in the Pacific Ocean.
Flight Dynamics reports that Orion is right on the money. And there it is, high over the Pacific, America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond now in view. Orion under its chutes descending towards splashdown. Splashdown. Orion, back on Earth.
The mission is a success. It traveled more than 1.4 million miles, or 2.2 million kilometers, on a path around the moon and return safely to Earth. Orion performed 2 lunar flybys, coming within 80 miles, or 130 kilometers, of the lunar surface. Orion traveled nearly 270,000 miles, or 430,000 kilometers, from our home planet. While in a distant lunar orbit, Orion surpassed the record for distance traveled by a spacecraft designed to carry humans, previously set during Apollo 13. There is one takeaway that NASA will have to improve upon in future missions.
It turns out that the heat shield did not perform quite as well as they had initially thought, and they are figuring out why exactly that happened, exactly how well it did hold up. But it is still labeled as a successful mission.
Humanity is now one step closer to landing and walking on the moon. After the success of Artemis 1, next up on NASA's agenda is Artemis 2.
It is going to be the first time that humans have gone beyond low Earth orbit, and the first time that they have orbited the moon since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. It's also going to be demonstrating and testing the capabilities of certain navigation and propulsion systems on the Orion spacecraft. So it's going to be, obviously, a huge moment in space travel and space exploration.
10, 9.
This mission resembles Apollo 8, which launched in December 1968. Apollo 8 was the first crewed mission around the moon, and like Artemis 2, did not include a human landing on the moon's surface. The astronauts were Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders.
Apollo 8's original mission was to test the lunar module in high Earth orbit and make a rendezvous in high Earth orbit. The program got changed because the lunar modules fell way behind schedule, and the Russians were threatening a circumlunar flight that would have been a major PR blow to Kennedy's "we're going to beat the Russians to the moon" program.
Apollo 8 became an historic flight. It is remembered for its amazing photo called Earthrise. As Apollo 8, which was a prelude to Apollo 11, Artemis 2 will serve as a prelude to a human landing on the moon's surface, which is called Artemis 3.
The Artemis 3 mission is the first mission that will involve SpaceX's Starship lander, and it is going to be the first mission to land humans on a lunar surface. During the Artemis 3 mission, the Orion spacecraft will be launched by the SLS, the Space Launch System, proceed to the moon, in orbit around the moon.
SLS will deliver the Artemis 3 astronauts to the Lunar Gateway. Another rocket will be launched around the same time called Super Heavy. It will carry a lunar lander called Starship, a SpaceX spacecraft which will fly to lunar orbit and dock with Gateway. Astronauts will transfer to Starship, which will then detach and proceed to the lunar surface, delivering the first woman and person of color to the moon.
They've chosen the South Polar region of the moon as the landing site. And that is a very important region because there's evidence that water ice exists within that region. In the interior of lunar craters, there's a lot of scientific opportunities there for different studies to be carried out. We're down there for roughly a week, performing explorations. Re-enter Starship lander, leave moon surface, where they will again dock with Orion, transfer over, then pilot themselves back to Earth for re-entry.
An entire series of Artemis missions are planned, even beyond Artemis 3.
The Artemis 4 mission is going to bring humans back to the moon, once again to the lunar surface. It is also going to bring called the IHAB, or the habitable module, to lunar orbit from the Japanese Space Agency, and is going to carry out the assembly or the construction of the Lunar Gateway, also simply called Gateway for short. It's going to be humanity's first space station beyond low Earth orbit. It's going to be a staging point for all moon-based missions. Gateway would also offer an ideal refueling site for future missions to Mars. If instead of going straight to Mars from the Earth, all the rocket fuel that entails, and all the cost that entails, if you only need enough fuel to get yourself to the moon, which is obviously much, much closer than Mars, makes the mission much cheaper.
The goal? To create a permanent human presence on the moon, expanding humanity's reach into the solar system. For Xploration Outer Space, I'm Emily Calandrelli, and we'll see you next time.